Okay, I will be reviewing for you the movie called Presumed Innocent. It's not a movie, it's a TV series. Very good TV series, especially if you are a fan of legal dramas and crimes. This is very good. So, the story is the story of a lawyer, played here by Jake Gyllenhaal. And this lawyer has a wife and two kids, a son and a daughter. And although he has that, he also has a mistress. Okay, so the thing is, his mistress is also a lawyer. And if you know anything about the law, is that it can be very, it can be an offense to have relationship with people that are in the legal profession, especially if you find yourself in legal trouble. Now, basically, in the workplace, it's not always a good idea to be in a relationship with your coworker. That is why this lawyer was hiding his affair. Okay, now he was hiding his affair from his, of course, from his workplace as much as he could. But the thing is now, his mistress turns up dead. One day, they arrive at the office and they find out that, their coworker, she's dead. Now, uh, what happens now is that the lawyer, portrayed by Jake, right? He volunteers to be the one investigating the the whole case of the murder. Okay, he volunteers himself. Nobody really, at the beginning, nobody really knows why he's volunteering to be the lawyer that's going to be prosecuting, right? It's just that he's a good lawyer, and they knew that they were close to each other, but they never suspected an affair. So they allow him to be the prosecutor. The prosecutor is the lawyer that's going to be trying to find the killer, and is going to try to prosecute them, right? To put them behind bars and all that. So, in the process of being the prosecutor, what transpires is that Jake is actually hiding evidence. Now, how do we find out that he's hiding evidence? Well, eventually, it's gonna turn out that you know his his fingerprints, his DNA was at the scene of the crime, because the crime happened in the lawyer's house. So they so what happens is that there is some change in the office, in the law office, because if you know something about law, if he's the prosecutor, that means he works for the government. And so his boss is hired by the people. And it just turns out that in the middle of all that murder investigation, there's a change in office. So a new boss is elected, and the new boss doesn't like Rusty. That's his name. Rusty Sabich is his name. So what the new boss of Rusty does is he takes the case out of Rusty's hands and he gives the case to Rusty's enemy, to Rusty's competition. It's just another lawyer that really doesn't really like Rusty for some reason. They're in very much of a competition. So when that happens, that means Rusty is no longer the one investigating as a prosecutor. So now when Rusty's competitor, right, competing lawyer becomes the new prosecutor, he realized that Rusty has been hiding some evidence about this murder trial. And it just turns out that some of the evidence that was hidden is evidence that proved that Rusty was at the scene of the crime. Even worse than that, some of the evidence proves that Rusty had impregnated the now deceased lawyer. So that really becomes a big deal because now, the whole story gets flipped in his head. Instead of Rusty being the prosecutor trying to find a murderer, Rusty becomes a suspect in the murder of his co-worker, and he has a motive since he's a married man with a family and she turns up dead with his semen inside of her. More than his semen, she was pregnant with his kid. So that's a motive. And Rusty's competition is really going to put some pressure to find him guilty. And so Rusty is in a fight of his life. As good as a lawyer as he is, he's going to do whatever he can to prove that he's innocent, that he did not kill his mistress. And so the whole series goes into this kind of back and forth between the prosecution, who's trying to prove that Rusty killed his mistress, and Rusty defending himself as best as he can. Now, there's all type of evidence that come up along the way, and as the viewer of this TV show, you really don't know if Rusty is innocent or if he's guilty. You're just waiting and watching the whole thing unfold. But sometimes you get a peek into Rusty's personal life with his family and the story that was going on with his mistress. And the way that Rusty managed to defend himself is that, first of all, he knows the law. He knows that he's presumed innocent unless he can be proven guilty. And so because of that, he's going to try to, his whole defense is going to be like, look, the way that the victim was found in her apartment, resemble the resembles other victims of another serial killer. So she was found, she was all tied up and all that. And it resembles how it resembles another killing that occurred previously. And as a matter of fact, the serial killer who used to kill his victim that way is now behind bars. And he was put behind bars by the mistress that now is found dead. So Rusty's defense is going to try to say that the guy that killed his mistress, whose name was, by the way, Carolyn Polemus, he's going to say, okay, Carolyn Polemus' killer is the same guy that killed all these other people in the past, that was tying people up, and it looked like some bondage play. Because she's the one that put him behind bars, so it was revenge. That's going to be his defense. But the problem is, how can a guy that's behind bars be responsible for the death of Carolyn Polemus? That's what the prosecution is going to say. They're going to say, there's no way he could have done it. He's behind bars. So Rusty's going to, like I said, he's trying to defend himself. So he's going to say, well, look, maybe he had somebody else do it because he actually threatened Carolyn Polemus a few times. So he had motive. So remember, if Rusty can prove that other people had motive to kill Carolyn Polemus, he's going to look less guilty. And as long as the jury doesn't have, as long as the jury can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he's guilty, he's good. So he's going to throw all these possible scenarios at the jury to kind of make them doubt that he is guilty beyond reasonable doubt. So that was one of his tactics, is to say that, look, this other guy, serial killer, had a motive. Now, another thing that happens is that as more evidence pop up, he also, you also kind of suspect, you're also trying to find out not only if he's the killer, but if he's not the killer, you're trying to find out who could have been the killer. And as it turns out, you realize that there are some other suspects, right? Like, for instance, because he was having an affair, could it be that someone was, like his wife, was jealous and wanted to end Carolyn Polemus's wife? That's what you kind of wonder, because the wife was aware that he had an affair, as a matter of fact. So, but he had told her before, oh, this is over, our affair is over. So as a matter of fact, as the story goes, you kind of suspect that Rusty is actually innocent, right? But the reason why you think he's innocent is because you get some hints or some clues that maybe he knows who the real killer is. You suspect that he's protecting his wife, but you kind of get the feeling that he's not even sure who may have killed his mistress. He's not sure who's killed his mistress. But he knows it's not him. And he's kind of walking on eggshells because he thinks it might have been his wife. And actually, this is such a great TV show because you actually think it might also be Rusty's competition who killed Carolyn Polimus, because you get some clues that he was also interested in her. You get some clues that he really didn't like Rusty, so could he have plotted the whole thing to put Rusty behind bars? In the end, Rusty manages to free himself from being found guilty. It's really a masterpiece, the way that he managed to play his cards as a smart lawyer, but he managed to be found not guilty. So that's great, but you kind of want to know then, if he's not guilty, who is? And that's when at the end of the TV series, you kind of see Jake, he's playing Rusty. Rusty, he meets his wife, and they're kind of relieved that he's not going to be found guilty. And he's like, I know it was you. He says that to his wife, I know it was you. And despite this, you kind of get a feeling that he still loves his wife, even though he almost got found guilty. He could have spent his life behind bars, but he kind of have this attitude that it was his fault that everything happened, because he realized that him being unfaithful kind of led to all these events. So you develop a lot of sympathy for this character who takes responsibility for everything that happened, to the point where he's not even mad at his wife for killing his mistress. And he's kind of expecting his wife to kind of confess that she's the one that killed the mistress. But it's a big surprise when she does not confess. And as a matter of fact, it turns out that it was his daughter that killed his mistress. His daughter comes and she admits her crime. She admits that she had been following her dad and she wanted to confront the mistress. And when she confronted the mistress actually arrogantly told her that she was pregnant. And that turned Rusty's daughter into a rage. She was not herself. She was dissociated from her own personality, and she struck the mistress, Carolyn Polimus, with a fatal blow to the head. Now, here's where it gets interesting. She left, she went back home, and by a very fortunate turn of event, Rusty, that same night, was going back to Carolyn Polimus' apartment, and he was going there maybe to talk to her again, kind of fix because he had some issues with his mistress. And when he went back, he saw she was dead. And in his mind, he was like, damn, who killed her? And in his mind, he thought, first of all, that it could have been his wife. But second of all, he was really thinking people are going to think that it's him because his DNA is all over the place. People are going to suspect him. So what did he do? He tied his mistress the same way that the serial killer had tied his victims. He did that because he knew that he could, if people try to pin the murder on him, he would need some sort of a defense, right? And his defense would be, well, it's the serial killer that did it, or that had it done, because he had been threatening Carolyn Polimus, and he had motive. So when you at the end realize what really happened that night that Carolyn Polimus died, you really want to applaud how well structured this whole story was. Really, I give it a 10 out of 10 in terms of a TV series, and of course Jake played very well his role, and the other actors as well. So that is it.